Hello, it's Tash here and welcome to episode 5 of How to Renovate. In this episode, I'll be covering tips on the most used room in the house, the kitchen. And that's probably why it's no surprise that kitchens are the most popular rooms to renovate, with 35% of renovators focusing on this space, followed by bathrooms at 28%. So having a good layout in the kitchen is make or break. You can have the most gorgeous kitchen with the most expensive cabinetry and the most expensive worktops and appliances, but if your layout and your storage doesn't work, you will just hate using the kitchen. Because the kitchen is such an important room to get right, I've recorded a detailed video lesson called How to Plan Your Dream Kitchen, where I will teach you step by step how to plan your kitchen. It's going to cover how to design a good layout, how to create a style board, how to plan your storage, how to plan your lighting, and advice on materials, finishes, and appliances. So this lesson is a paid product, and you can find details on how to buy it in this episode's show notes or wherever you may be watching or listening to this episode. Okay, let's get going. So here are my 5 top tips for nailing that kitchen layout. Let's go. In our 5-pillar process, the information in this episode falls under pillar 2, preparation. As you know by now, everything I teach about renovations falls under this process. There will be more information on how to get your hands on some more resources on the process at the end of this episode. So just listen out for that. Let's get started. So my top tip for number 1 for kitchen layouts is plan for minimal clutter. So this you do quite simply by prioritizing your storage. And if you're clever with the storage that you do add in, you can have, clear worktop space, you can have an organized kitchen. It really is all about planning your storage well. Okay, so I know it's quite a strange place to start, but when I work with clients and I'm designing kitchens for them, I ask them actually to start with a clear out in the kitchen, and I say to them, have a major clear out, get rid of everything you don't use or you don't need anymore. Only have the things that you still want to keep. It may sound a bit mad, but there's a method to my madness, because once they've got rid of everything that they don't want or need anymore, it just makes it so much easier to actually plan storage for the items that they do have. And you can plan a more realistic amount of storage, and you can plan for how they will be stored within the drawers or the cabinets. And you can really get an organized kitchen by doing it this way, and allocating a space for everything that you actually have, not just randomly putting cabinets and drawers in and hoping that everything will fit. So actually knowing what you need to store and starting there will help you with knowing how much storage you need to add into the finished design. So just going back to the point of kind of planning for minimal clutter. So of course it's nice to have a few things out in the kitchen. Some people love that kind of chef style kitchen where you've got pots and pans hanging on hooks and utensils out. But generally I find that people get quite frustrated with a kitchen that's too cluttered, and they get annoyed by the countertop clutter, having to move things around to use something else, get something out of a drawer that you might use on a not so regular basis, but to get it out, it's a hassle. So I do find that clutter does generally frustrate people in the kitchen. But if you very carefully plan your storage by allocating a place for all the items you own at design stage, it really will make sure that everything has a place. It will keep your worktops clutter-free and, for the food preparation they're meant to be there for. And also kind of adequate and well-organized storage is essential for a functional kitchen. So you can optimize. This is not only about adding in the drawers and the cabinets, it's also optimizing the space that each one has within it. So you can do this by incorporating the pull-out shelves, vertical dividers, customized storage solutions, just to make sure that you utilize every single inch efficiently. Okay, so moving on to tip number 2. My top tip number 2 is to have a dedicated small appliance area. I love this one. So having your toaster, your juicer, your coffee maker, your blender, all on the countertops makes it look cluttered and disorganized. But there's some of those things you can't keep in drawers, so you have to have them on the countertops. So what I've done in almost every single kitchen I've designed is to design an allocated area for these items. So sometimes it's an area that can be closed off from view with a slider that, a sliding door that slides down. Sometimes it's in just an open area. Sometimes it's got cabinet doors. But it can even just be a little hidden corner. It doesn't have to be closed off. But if it's in an area that's hidden from the main sight lines, it just means that your countertops stay clear, but you also have this dedicated area to use all those useful small appliances without having to bring them out of drawers or clutter your countertop. So I really, really love this tip in the kitchen. It just keeps your countertops clear and it makes your kitchen more efficient. And it makes sure those small appliances are fully accessible. You can reach them really easily and quickly when you need to use them. So I absolutely love this one. So let's move on to number 3. So my tip number 3 is keep the working triangle in mind. I am sure that you've probably heard about this one before. I have always taken the working triangle in the kitchen with a pinch of salt. I mean, living in London, space is so limited and the kitchens are generally small. So it can be difficult to accommodate a good working triangle. And a working triangle, if you don't know, but it's the space between the main prep areas in the kitchen. So it involves positioning the 3 main work areas, the sink, the stove and the fridge, in a triangular layout with certain distances between those 3 zones. But in small kitchens, it can be really hard to do. And so it can almost be sometimes impossible to accommodate a true working triangle by when this rule was made, what it meant. But I do agree that leaving sufficient space around each the sink, stove and the fridge does optimize and streamline workflow and efficiency actually, and functionality. So it may not be a true working triangle that you can create, but just keeping that concept in mind of having those areas spread out enough to have enough space to work around each zone will give you a more efficient kitchen. This design concept of the working triangle, it aims to kind of optimize the workflow by minimizing the distance between the key areas, but by still keeping them separate enough so that you can comfortably work around each area for maximum efficiency. I mean, ideally, the kind of each leg of the triangle should be between 4 and 9 feet. But again, I'm going to go back to my pinch of salt on this and say that if you have a tiny kitchen, you can still plan it well by just keeping the concept of the working triangle in mind, and it will streamline your cooking processes, and it will enhance the overall functionality of your kitchen. We are moving on to my top tip number 4, which is plan for traffic flow. Okay, so this is a big one actually, because you need to kind of carefully consider the flow of traffic through the kitchen, and also any areas that kind of lead off of it or intersect with it. Because you want to plan kind of to avoid congestion in the kitchen area, because obviously it's quite dangerous. There's the fire, there's heat, and so you want to really make sure that the flow through and around the kitchen is planned really well. You want to plan to kind of prevent congestion, to ensure a comfortable space around the cooking. You can really get into the details when it comes to the kind of pathways as well. So that means kind of any space between two kind of cabinet benches. So ideally, any pathway should be at least 92 centimeters wide, and this just makes it comfortable for the 1 or 2 people to pass whilst someone might still be standing using the countertop. Someone else can pass comfortably behind them. It also leaves enough space for any kind of opening doors or appliances into that pathway. So kind of just keep that in mind when you're thinking about your kitchen layout. You don't want to have the path too small because it will feel cramped, and also it could potentially be dangerous. And you don't want to have it too wide because you want to have a kind of comfortable distance between the worktops to be able to use your kitchen efficiently. So the paths are actually really important, and I always kind of really concentrate on those when I'm designing. So and this is also an important point, because if your kitchen connects to other living areas or other living spaces, because as we have now, we've loved open plan for the past few years, and generally the kitchen will be connected to a living area and or a dining area. So just make sure that the flow, you should be able to plan the layout to make sure that the flow is easy from area to area without disrupting the functionality of the kitchen and the cooking and the preparation areas. So those are definitely my top tips for this point. So let's move on to the next one. Okay, so moving on to top tip number 5, and it is add an island or somewhere to sit. So I love an island. I know people don't always want them, but I absolutely love putting an island into a kitchen. And if your space can accommodate it, of course. Not every kitchen can accommodate an island, but if it can, I would always suggest adding an island. Not only does it provide a block of additional storage and prep space, but it's also an opportunity to get creative with the design. You can really get creative. You can go for a different finish, you can go for different doors, you can put a different worktop on there to the rest of the kitchen, or a different material. So you can really make a design statement with it if that's what you want in your kitchen. But I just think it is quite a nice element to have in there. I also love an island for the social aspect. It really does make the room multifunctional. It can be used when you're entertaining or as a breakfast bar. And I don't actually think that I've had a party at home where the island hasn't been the centre of the party or the place to be. So I really like that about it. And of course, if you don't have space for an island, you can just allocate a little area. There's just a little section against the wall. You can put a couple of stools and a little bar. And I just think it's a really lovely way to make the kitchen a bit more of a social space. I think with most renovations, what people want is not to be for the person who's cooking. They just don't want to be in the kitchen on their own, closed off from everybody. So I think even if your kitchen is small, to add some seating in there, just to be able to kind of invite people in and chat while you're in there doing cooking and the prep work, is a really lovely thing to do. I think that's it for this episode. That's my top tip number 5, and that brings us to the end of the episode. And I hope this really inspired you to get planning on that dream kitchen. There's so much to consider in the kitchen. It is one of my favorite rooms to design. And like I said, if you want to learn more, go and check out that lesson that I mentioned. I'll link to it in the show notes. I really hope you enjoyed the lesson, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Bye for now. For more information on my 5-pillar process for successful renovation, you can go directly to southplacestudio.com/pillars, where you'll find an introduction to the process and what each pillar covers.